And this panel was the suggestion of one of our new SheTek board members, Anusha Kakani. And she is a new founding partner of a law firm, and I'm sure she'll talk a little bit about that. So I will now turn it over to Anusha to get us started.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Elaine. I'm so excited to be here. It's been an incredible day of panels and information. Thank you so much for everybody who's participated so far. I think this panel is very timely. Earlier in the day today, we talked about how the new generations today have a much greater interest in entrepreneurship than ever before. I think entrepreneurship is sort of on the tip of everybody's tongue, at the back of everybody's minds. And the idea behind this panel is to talk about entrepreneurship, but with a lens to, the biggest topics trending today and sort of the biggest challenges, opportunities, and what entrepreneurs today are really thinking about and going through. So with that, before we jump to our speakers, we thought we would start with a little poll. Joanne, I don't know if you're able to run that up, but we want to just get a sense of who you are and so the question asks, how would you describe your professional status? So we'll just give everybody a minute to answer. Do we have the results, Joanne? Awesome. So we have a good amount of people that are entrepreneurs or self-employed or looking for career transition or thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, but it does look like a vast majority are employed at various organizations. So thanks for that information, super helpful. To kick things off, I will ask our panelists to introduce themselves, and then I will introduce myself, and then we will get started. So just going in random order on the way they appear on my screen. Monica, do you want to start with an introduction?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. Or good afternoon now, right? I'm glad you guys were able to make it. We've got a great panel. So I'm Monica Smith, and I own and started a advertising and marketing firm called Marketsmith Inc. We are powered by 5 patents that I created along the lines of being a software engineer, and I'm very grateful I did that, but it was very painful. So, entrepreneurship is something that I've been dabbling in for a couple of decades. Some things I've done extraordinarily well, and some things have been extraordinarily painful. So I look forward to sharing that. The one thing I can tell you is that you've got a great group of women here that can help talk not only about entrepreneurship, but also about the importance of technology and putting your first foot out there to keep trying and getting where you want to go.
Thank you, Monica. And Pat, would you like to go next?
Pat Hedley. I took a long road to entrepreneurship. I actually grew up in New Jersey. My parents were immigrants. My mom was an entrepreneur. I ended up studying computer science, so I really loved technology. I ended up working for a firm for 30 years. So for those who are employed, I totally get that. Unusual to work for a firm for so long. But in the last 6 years, I've been investing in and advising growth companies. I've invested behind a number of female entrepreneurs. I love working with entrepreneurs. In fact, I'm an entrepreneur myself in the work that I do. I'm also the author of a book called Meet 100 People, which encourages us all to go out and build relationships and networks. I believe it's fundamentally important for career success. I'm happy to talk about that too as part of the entrepreneurial journey.
Thank you so much. Marjorie, would you like to go next?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Marjorie Perry. My laptop is still being worked on, so forgive me for having to do this mode of technology. I am a construction engineering company here located in Newark for 30 years. We primarily work on major hotels. We're still currently at Newark Airport, do a lot of federal work. We are, gosh, we've been around so long, I can't remember. I didn't start that way. I started as a sales and marketing person coming out of corporate America prior to 30 years, so I won't date myself. Lost my first $1 million in my first 5 years of being in business. Realized I didn't know what I didn't know that I didn't know. The dream was bigger than my understanding. Went back, got my MBA at NJIT, and then I went back and worked on my civil engineer degree. And that takes us to today. And hopefully you guys will be able to start flying out of the new Terminal 1 in the next 15 days.
Awesome. Thanks, Marjorie. And Grace, would you like to go next?
Sure, happy to. Hey everyone, it's awesome to be here with all of you today. My name is Grace Hahn. I'm an investor at Edison Partners. So Edison Partners is a Princeton, New Jersey-based growth equity fund. And what that means is we invest in growth stage software, fintech, and healthcare companies and help them scale to the next level. I've spent my entire career in and around technology. Prior to Edison Partners, I was at a late stage growth equity firm called Brighton Park Capital. And then prior to that, started my career at Evercore in their New York technology M&A group.
Great, thank you. We have a great panel here today. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Anusha Kakani. I am the founding partner of Radicle Law LLP, a very new law firm that I founded with one of my dear friends from law school. And so we are a minority woman-owned law firm. And what really drove us to start this firm is that we wanted a place where law was used for social good. I worked at 2 law firms prior to this and just could never quite find that passion there because I just felt like I didn't have control over what I was doing. And my only goal really was to use law for social good. And rather than wait for people to create those opportunities for me, decided to just take the leap of faith and create those opportunities for myself. So I'm new onto the entrepreneurship journey. So I'm very much looking forward to learning from our very esteemed panelists. And to start things off, I wanted to ask a question that was really close to my heart. Entrepreneurship can seem really daunting. And I think people, especially when you first start out your career, you feel like you have to have a specific career graph all charted out very neatly, and each step flows very neatly into the next step, and it sort of naturally will lead you somewhere. And yet, usually people's journeys to entrepreneurship are not that neat and can be, very serendipitous or deeply personal. So I was wondering if the panelists could all tell me a little bit about what drove you to entrepreneurship. Was there like a specific goal you had in mind or something that happened? I think it would be really amazing to learn what drove you to entrepreneurship.
I'll start. I'll start. I was only getting a 3% raise and I was working with a lot of people that were wealthy. It was that simple. And I said, well, if they can do it, I can do it. So I didn't have a real plan of action. I just had a futuristic view of who I could be and what I could do. And everybody has that passion when they're coming out of the employee situation that they could see it bigger and better if they're ready for it. I think you'll hear today is that it's not an easy path, even though we think in the first 5 minutes it will be easy because the dream is so powerful. So that's how I started. I just said, I think I could do better. I didn't have a bigger plan than that. I think I could be a millionaire. Why not? I think I could sit in the C room with some of these people that, I'm actually sitting as a director now in another location. So that was my journey.
I think that for me, I started out 10 years. I had 10 years of business experience before I started out at 30. And for me, I always loved the idea of, I wasn't sure it was called entrepreneurship back when I started, but it certainly was a really exciting thing to see individuals have a dream and then follow them. And I would read Inc. magazine and Entrepreneur magazine. I would read all of them when I had a chance on a plane traveling from one business trip to the next. And I would cry. I would read these stories and cry of these journeys of individuals that chased their love or their passion, or they saw something, like Marjorie just said, so differently that they could improve upon. And I just could relate. So, when I got let go of my last job where I was a junior partner, I was doing very, very well. They let me go, and then 5 days later asked me to come back. But the more important piece, I like to say they let me go, because they did let me go first. And, when they were letting me go, they said, you'd be a lot happier. I'm doing you a favor as an entrepreneur. But I didn't know that was really the gift they were giving me. It was the gift, and it was very alluring to be able to say that they wanted me back. But nonetheless, I took the leap for a lot of different reasons, but I took the leap. So glad I took the leap. I had a supportive partner at home, and took one step and I did it. And then I had a couple of other, I've done many other ventures, of which is part of the entrepreneurial journey as well. And just because you do one successfully it's not a guarantee that you do everyone successfully. So I think part of what we'll cover off in the panel today is kind of talking about the journey, whether professional, as you're making the leap from going from one profession into technology, or the leap from going from a profession to an entrepreneur, is that, it's a thousand little, millions of little steps that you take. And just if you go off a little bit and it's not exactly the way it works out, don't think of it as a failure and you stop what you're doing. You just get back on the course, you pick yourself back up and you move forward. But I'm sure that Pat and Grace can tell you the stories of other really, theirs and the stories of other entrepreneurs that they've seen as well, that and individuals that change professions and do really great things. And I think we have a couple of different ways to get there. But Pat, why don't you talk a little bit about it for you?
Sure. Look, my path was a long one to becoming an entrepreneur or being self-employed, which is what I am. And I have a couple of things that I have, in process. One is I'm an advisor to a number of firms, and that's grown much more than I could have expected it to. Look, I do have, a number of years experience under my belt, and I think those who are employed in their current job, my advice is to continue to build your expertise and experience, and very importantly, continue to build your network, because that is tremendous value, regardless of whether you stay employed for somebody else. It will help your career advancement, or whether you decide to go out on your own. Because I will say that over the last 6 years, the investments that I've made and the advisory relationships that have come to me through my network, and not necessarily my first degree connections, not necessarily the people who I've known the best, but the people that I've met along the way. And so, my other business venture is this book I published, and on kind of the programs that I have available around it. Again, I'm really proud of it, because I did it from scratch. I did it on my own. I continue to build it, and I see traction, and there's nothing more exciting than that. But, having worked for 30 years as an investor, what an investor does, and Grace will comment on this, I'm sure, is work with entrepreneurs. All I can say is that the journey is rarely a straight line. But I do find that those entrepreneurs who are smart about building their network early have a certain advantage. So if you start to talk to investors before you need them, if you start to talk to employees before you need to hire at that level, Obviously, you should be talking to customers and clients all the time because that makes a huge difference. Those who are very proactive about the networking piece have an advantage. And everyone on this call is already taking that step by being part of a group where you can meet other people and you can continue to learn and you can continue to build relationships. Grace, off to you.
Thank you, Pat. I think one thing that you can see just listening to Monica, Marjorie, and Pat's stories is everyone's is different. And that is completely true with every single entrepreneur that we meet. And the first thing we ask on the first call I have, or the first meeting I have with an entrepreneur, is what's your story? What is the background that got you to where you are today? Because each and every one is so different and it's so informative on the business that they're building. Say a common thread that you often find throughout all these stories is a problem they saw in their own lives that they wanted to address and they wanted to solve. And to Pat's point about building a network, I think another way of saying it is it's being proactive in what you're going to have to do rather than reactive. If you're meeting investors when you're raising capital, in other words, the money to fund your business, that's reactive. If you're meeting investors a year before you need to raise, that's proactive. And the value of that is it puts you as the entrepreneur in the driver's seat rather than the person you're trying to raise capital from.
Yeah, it's so helpful to hear all that, because I think my big takeaways from this question is really individuality and proactivity. Is, if you're finding yourself in a situation where the needs of your employer aren't aligned with your needs, or if your passions aren't aligned with what you're doing, you sort of have to take those proactive steps and build networks around you that can inform you as to what your options are, or motivate you or inspire you. And then you can sort of take that next step. The individuality piece speaks to me a lot, because that sort of was my journey to entrepreneurship, is that I kept waiting for a law firm to provide me with certain opportunities that were in line with my goals for my own career. And I kept waiting and I kept waiting. And eventually I said, you know what, I'm going to create my own opportunities, because it is really hard to map out one journey that fits all here. That's just not how it works. And I think the networking piece, super important. Mentorship is a very important goal for SheTek, if not the most important goal. And it's important to all of you as well. So my next question to everybody is, what's some advice that you have for the SheTek network, particularly the younger women, about why mentorship is so important? And also if you have some advice on how you can forge strong mentor-mentee relationships, especially in today's digital world.
I don't mind going first on that. I think mentorship is essential. And I will have to say, from my own personal perspective, I have mentors who are younger than me and those who are older than me, and certainly those who are peers. I think the most important thing for a younger person trying to determine who could be their mentor is to not necessarily put a label on it, but meet as many people as you can and see where there's chemistry, see where you can be as helpful to that individual as they can be to you. Because I will tell you, some of the young people, I have one in particular who calls me her friend-tor, has become a friend. And it is that relationship, building that relationship, that I think is so important. I think the one intimidating thing that can occur, especially with a large group, is that you feel you have to meet everyone at once, and you don't. I actually think real success when you go to a conference, or even if you're part of a group, is to find a couple of people and build that relationship so that you feel comfortable and you can go the second layer of depth and ask some of those more vulnerable questions that you really might want to get advice on. And you don't necessarily need to put a mentor label on it when you're a part of this journey. I would recommend just meet people, talk to them, learn their stories, share your stories, see how it evolves. And if you plant a seed, continue to water it. Don't let it go fallow by not spending the time and attention. It's not enough just to go to this event one time. It's really important to go more than once and to get to see some of the same faces and develop those relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the label, as you said, can often lead to people being intimidated because you're like, oh, am I supposed to email this person and say, hey, can you be my mentor? It's a little, awkward, especially if they don't know them. So thinking of it more in terms of just I'm forming a connection, I'm forming a relationship, I'm forming a friendship, I think can take some of that initial, at least like, nervousness out. And then, as you said, you have to keep it going. It's not just a one time, hey, I reach out, great, you're my mentor, done and done. That's a relationship that you have to forge, like just like, a seed you have to water. Monica or anyone else on the panel, anything to add there?
I think that the first thing is that, I think that it's really, really important, and we still don't do it enough, is women have to support women. You have to, you just have to, and you have to take the time, and you have to open doors. You have to push some folks out of the way, because women have to take more initiative in helping other women. And I also think that, in today's world, the digital world, there's a couple of things that you can do really quickly and well. And I think I'd like to give you some ideas. There are plenty of conferences and things that are virtual, things that have been recorded, really good information out there that didn't really exist a couple of years ago. So you can really, there's great, podcasts and things like that. And when there is a bit of a snapshot of something that's interesting to you, or something that resonates, or something that reminds you of the person that you're trying to really get in touch with and start to build a relationship with, and be able to open that door, so that when you do have the right question or the right moment where you really do need some feedback, you're able to do that. And part of the way to do that is to share information that you think is helpful, to reach out to the person and give them something that would help them, or enlighten them, or invite them, or help them to connect with somebody else. So always think about connecting with something that is a nice little gift. Like if you were to go to somebody's house and you give them a flower or a plant. So I think that way. And then the third part is that, don't judge a book by its cover. Really, if the title, or the person looks, fierce, or the person is quiet, what I like to do is know who I'm with, make sure I understand who they are before going in, and just being able to have a connection with them, or really just say, oh, by the way, did you know so and so? And just try to build a little bit of a connection that helps, know who's in the room. So do your homework and make sure that you don't let opportunities go by. If you believe in any kind of fate, or hard work, or luck, however you want to do it, we're all in this room for a reason right now. And there's probably some better connection for each and every person. So don't think that, oh, I'm here and they're there. No, we're all here together, and try to think about a way to make a connection with me. I know for everybody who reaches out to me, I try to respond to everybody within a certain time frame, no matter how they reach out to me, because I think it's important. And somebody wrote in the notes, and I can't remember who did, but I said, I can't tell you how many years I went. I've actually told Marjorie that, because I've been on a panel together before. I went for years and years and years without talking to anybody. Michelle's also, I believe, here, and knows that I've been, I was more isolated because I thought I was alone. The reality is there's a lot of women out there, and there's a lot of men as well, that would love to just get to know me over the years. And I missed those opportunities. So now I try to tell everybody, get out there. You see somebody, what's the worst thing that you say hello to somebody? What's the worst thing? They don't say hello back. You just get up and you say hello to the next person. That's what my recommendation is.
Great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Monica. And Pat, Grace, anything to add there?
Look, I think that every person has a treasure and it's up to us to find it. I think that the more people you know, the more you can introduce people to one another. And I think you should be generous with the gift of introductions. I've certainly found that millennials are tremendously wonderful in this way. And I've met so many people through my younger friends. Don't be afraid of intergenerational networking. Meet people who are different than you are. I think there's huge value and benefit in that because their networks are likely to be different and you get to be plugged into that. So there are so many things to think about as you think about building your networking skills. And frankly, the more you do of it, the better. And we should not be alone in this journey and isolate ourselves. I'm sure that those who felt that way, as Monica said, and kind of discover the new way, which is to talk to people and find people, there's just such joy in that. And I think that makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Marjorie or Grace, anything to add?
Well, pretty much Monica and I follow each other in that conversation. And I have gone in front, and I'm also doing some private equity for a couple of firms right now in development. I will lead this, because everything has been very captured by the ladies. Bring your authentic self. 90% of the people that come to me and ask me to mentor them, I don't know who they are because they don't show me them. So be as authentic as you can be. Hey, I like going to get a hamburger. I mean, I don't, offer me something as simplistic as that. So they come in looking to impress. And I'm saying, no, just come in and be yourself. Tell me what your needs are. Monica said it at best. Sometimes people want to just take, and don't think I need anything back. Look for what's my hot button? What's my hot spot? What is it that I need? And then I think that mentor is willing to sit down because my day is extremely busy as well as everybody else that's on this call. So if I'm going to give up my time, I want to know that I have given it to you. You heard me, and become a deep listener. You don't have to feed me back all day. Learn deep listening skills, because deep listening skills means you are on point on what that person has just fed back to you. So don't try to lead and follow at the same time. Just follow for 5 minutes, and then we'll switch sides, and then you'll go into the leadership position.
I'd say the only thing I would add to that is to Marjorie's point on the busy schedules that a lot of people who are giving back as mentors have, is just be prepared for these meetings. Come with a set list of questions that you want to ask about and you want advice on. And then also just keep your mentors up to date. My best mentors in my career, we honestly probably only have long conversations about once, twice a year on like the big things. Like, I'm switching jobs and I really need advice. How am I navigating the situation? But throughout the year, quick email, a quick text of, hey, hope you're having a good holiday season. Or, hey, just want to give you this update. I did this awesome thing at work. Mentors love to just get those little bit of nuggets of check-in as well. It shows that all the time and effort that they are investing into you is really paying off.
Yeah, that's sort of like watering the seeds, as Pat was saying. You have to sort of periodically keep in touch. And we also touched on the importance of diversity in mentorship, and a lot of people in the chat are talking about that as well. And I remember going to a lot of meetings where there were questions like, okay, well, how do I, as a woman, approach a male mentor? And people were giving advice like, go in groups. So if you feel awkward doing a one-on-one, start as a group, and then you can take the relationship forward from there. We've had a question. I've been to sessions where we had questions on, okay, well, what if a woman is cut off during a meeting? Well, maybe other women can show up as allies and say, well, let the other person finish, or you have those scenarios where a woman might say something, a man might say something, and somebody catches on what the man says. But we as a woman can go back and say, well, as that woman said, so to try to shift the focus back onto the woman. And so we learned these like small things that you could do to sort of support other women in your network. And today, there's so much talk about diversity and inclusion, and yet access to capital for founders and people from diverse backgrounds still remains a challenge. So while we're seeing, trends, really positive trends on one direction, like, board diversity requirements, on the other hand, there's still a lot of work to be done. So my next question is, what advice would you have for minorities who are thinking about becoming entrepreneurs, whether they're women or whether it's a ethnicity or other type of minority? And particularly, how do you retain diverse people in a workplace and make them feel included? So what advice do you have for people who might be daunted by being a woman in a male-dominated industry? So how can we be successful when swimming up against the tide?
Okay, I'm going to start with that one. I'm in construction, 92% is men. One of the big gifts that I learned in this journey so far is that I stopped leading with being a minority. Let them handle what they see. I go in super prepared. As you know, as women, sometimes we have to have 400 degrees compared to 2 degrees, especially if I'm in an all-male room. I've prepared myself on emotional intelligence. I tell everyone, take a class on emotional intelligence so you can meet people where they are. And 3, the other thing that you want to do is, yes, I'm a woman of color, but I'm just as capable as anybody else in the room. What that look like? I'm financially literate. I understand how to read a profit and loss statement. I can read blueprints. I can do everything that you can do. So if they come back with an objective, you're prepared to answer each objective as they come along. 2, the access to capital is still a challenge. Monica and I have talked about that before, and I think Michelle is, and I've been on conferences. We're still having that depth of problem. One is because you've got Pat and Grace here. What's the asset I can tie to? Those 2 ladies are looking for a return on their investment. If you're selling widgets and it's only going to go to 5 local stores, think more globally. So when you get in front of a Pat or a Grace, they're more looking to see how you can expand outward in a global way. And 3, is your dream just for you versus the world? Monica's all over the place. She's just every place. I get calls from California to come and build a bridge in California. So that brand equity, and Monica will also speak to that in a second, is so important. And then somehow MZM gets to be more important than Marjorie Perry, and I just happen to be a woman of color. So it's 5 or 6 things that have to kind of go in concert all at the same time. And Black women and Latina women still are behind the 8 ball on getting access to capital. And that's because they are not asset heavy. So, those are courses that we're still trying to teach, etc. You can't even get to a Pat or a Grace. Here's just, let's get you through the banking system to get a line of credit, So would you agree with that, Monica? So,
yeah,
and Michelle, it says she's on the line as well.
That's the most important point. And I think that, the whole SheTek, I'm sure it's interesting, Marjorie, what you just said too, because I'm sure Chaya would fill you in on her story as well, because I think it's in the same lane. But the reality is, for the women that we're talking to today, right, the first thing is getting a banking relationship that matters and that understands. But it's the same thing. Here's the thing is that in getting with loans, where you first start off in banking, it is artificial intelligence that feed these models that talk about risk. And risk is assessed through not only your credit, but your assets that Marjorie was just saying. And then also, your long-term outlook, which is really now a very short-term outlook, because we see how fast the world moves. Things go up and things go down. So, and when you think about the artificial intelligence of historical matter, there's not a lot of women. Like, I continuously ask the bank when I'm talking about things, it's like, how many women are fed into the model in order to be able, because I know that the gender is playing a negative role in
models biased.
Now, so I think that the reality is that the truth of the matter is that women have a ways to go, and we need women very much like Grace and all of those that Marjorie, Pat, myself, that are investing in other to keep, keep lifting. But it is not easy. It's not easy, and you have to be very careful. And one of the things you have to do is really know your financial statements, and you have to know the numbers really, really well. You have to know the
Yes,
value.
Monica. Say it again, Monica. Say it again, Monica.
And you also have to know the value of your product, and you also need to know your landscape. And so understanding your business model, where it's impacting and what the opportunities are really, really important. And then where just, bring back, whether mentors or people of influence, continue to also surround yourself with people of influence. Keep sharing your story with them, because they also can help recommend you, be a person that says, I believe in what they're doing, introduce you to new people. So these two things together, knowing your story, knowing what you're providing, understanding your value, and then understanding your numbers and surrounding yourself with the right people, this confluence of effort should be able to help you, and then still deliver on your promise. You have to, on top of that, be successful. That's the key. You have to be successful. And when you have a misstep or a challenge, you've got to be able to bounce. You've got to be strong, and you've got to bounce. But you also need to know too, when the risk is too great and the loss is where you can't recover from. So having that understanding is also really, really important. And when you can have that story and be able to tell it, you can have really strong conversations around financial models and what your value is. But Grace wildly disagrees with me, so I'm sure she's going to jump in and tell me the money's raining down for women. But I think you guys are. It's good that Grace is there to give us, because Marjorie and I have already come through this. So, Grace is here to tell the newbies that things are getting better, which they are. But go ahead, Grace.
I completely agree with both of you. Things maybe are slightly better, but they're still not great. And I think it all comes down to two things: access of capital, and tangentially related to that, who you know. On the access to capital piece, in terms of getting funding, like there's two ways of funding. It's friends and family, or you're getting an equity investor or a debt investor. You're not going to get a loan from a bank if you don't fit their underwriting box. Now that is improving, and you are seeing a lot of evolution there, which is great. And then on the friends and family, who you know piece, like there's a reason that fraternities are such a popular thing at colleges still, and they have such a high ROI for the individuals who join, because it's this network of people who then go out and they go into banking, they go into consulting. I was in a sorority. Most of my sorority sisters, amazing career path, but they're now teachers, and they're now working in, they're nurses, and just different fields, very important fields. But I only have 2 sorority sisters who are in my field. And so I've had to go out and proactively build my network to find people in and around this system. And I think those two things, because diverse individuals, in this case, from a gender perspective, maybe don't have the same network naturally coming out of their childhood, coming out of college, like that is a little bit of a gating item. But you can change that yourself. You just have to be proactive in building out. To Pat's point, the network is the most important.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can't underline that more. And I do think things will change because the networks are better. And there are women now at private equity firms and at venture firms. There are not a lot of them, but they exist. And the Graces are out there. I was at my firm for almost 30 years. And over that period of time, I've for sure seen a lot of change. but it really depends on how proactive you are and how much, if you're looking to raise capital, you have to understand the investor's mindset and where they are. And I do think there is the right fit for various investors. I think there are investors who invest in non-asset based businesses, but the investor wants to do a couple of things. First of all, they don't want to lose money, full stop. So they're managing risk. And how do you manage risk? You manage it by, not talking to everybody, but talking to people who you trust or someone who you can mitigate that risk with in some way. Secondly, and very importantly, and very much to Marjorie's point, I couldn't underline it more, and Monica's, you have to know your numbers. This is about making money. This is about how you can grow and scale these businesses. And if you can't talk that language and build the story and create a plan for how you're going to do that, well, then an investor, somebody who wants to, be your partner in essence and help build that, they're not going to be able to fulfill their objective, which is to return capital to those who have invested in them. So you have to understand the mindset of the investor to be able to sell to them, to be able to build the network to them, and to be able to access the capital that you might need to build your business. Look, friends and family are really an important funder of very early stage businesses. And I encourage people who are early in their career or early in their entrepreneurial journey to think about that. And many businesses, if you're pricing it and have a good business model, may not need a lot of capital at the beginning. They may need it when they're scaling from a much higher level to an even higher level in a competitive environment. But in any case, back to the point of networking, regardless of where you come from, and my parents were immigrants and they had no network. And I learned this a little bit later in my career, that the network is so very important, by observing my male colleagues and seeing what advantages they had by knowing lots of people. And honestly, there was a time in my life, I had 3 young children, a very demanding job, and the last thing I wanted to do was to go to cocktails after work. And then I realized I was shortchanging myself and I didn't look at it the right way. And I realized that you have to fit networking into your own schedule. And if you have time to eat, you have time to meet. Have coffee with people, have lunch with people, have breakfast with people. You don't have to go to cocktails when you have kids waiting for you at home. Find ways to make it happen. Do it in a hybrid way. Have a virtual coffee or a virtual lunch, but you have to do it and no one can do it for you. And so I hope that message comes across loud and clear of how important of a responsibility we each have to continue to build our networks in order to learn and to get access to opportunities.
Yeah, all fantastic points. And as my law firm, Radicle Law, what we do a lot of the time is advise entrepreneurs and early stage companies. And a lot of this conversation, okay, well, how do I get capital? It's very individualistic. It depends on the kind of company you are and who are your investors, who's your target audience, and all of those questions come into play. But I think this lack of access to capital for minorities is definitely gaining more traction. We're seeing a lot more impact funds that are specifically aimed at, incubating and helping certain populations grow their businesses, like low income populations or minorities. And we're seeing a lot more banks now taking an active role also, as Grace was saying, trying to change their model so that, you account for more minorities, and also, more banks that are specifically putting together funds that are made available to certain minorities or groups. So I think there is progress, but there is a lot of work to still be done. And thank you to everybody who's adding questions in the chat. We'll definitely get to those at the end. Marjorie, I wanted to direct a question to you. You've founded multiple companies, including a consulting company, to help other startups and serial entrepreneurs, and you continue to motivate and shape minds today. So what would you say is the biggest challenge facing entrepreneurs today, and how can they work towards overcoming those? We touched on this a little, but wanted to dig deeper.
4 things. They don't listen. 2, they're stuck in their way. 3, the other obstacle I find is that they're not consistent. And 4, if you want to be a really, really strong business or an entrepreneur for sure, you have to be consistent and high level integrity. So if you say A on Monday, it has to be A on Tuesday, it has to be A on Wednesday. It has to be way on Thursday, Friday. There is no day off to not be at your A game. So what we try to do in the boot camps that I teach and motivate is, one, I put them through the financial paces. They all say they're entrepreneurs and they're in charge. I tell them to read me back what's the percentages that they should be on their particular product. And I would say the first 4 weeks, I have to fail them on their first 5 minutes because they have the dream, because they sat at a coffee table somewhere, but it doesn't translate to the public. So we build around that. That's another piece that I do. I find weaknesses there. If they stick with us through the 8 to 12 week program, they usually get it and the transformation begins. And now at least they have a blueprint to start with. As everyone has said today, Grace, Pat, and Monica, there is no direct plan. It's always an evolving, moving plan. It's a fluid plan. Two, I teach them how to build advisory boards. You know, you have to know that you don't know that you don't know. All right. And maybe they didn't go to an elite school or a school where, or they worked at night and went to school during the day, so they didn't have time to build networking. So we try to teach them the framework of how to network. And three, sometimes in the minority community, they feel very, very disingenuous because they feel that they're Black and that's why they're not getting ahead. So we try to remove that barrier as well. Well, let's look at what they're telling you. And then we feed off of that and get them more from problem thinking to solution driven. So those are some of the things that I do in our program that we teach. And I happen to love that part of my life of teaching because it's just so important today to give and to teach them what a deeper dive really means. And the last thing I'll leave you with, and Monica probably, she'll say, Marge, thanks for saying that. I teach them how to meet people where they are. We can't meet them where we are. We have to meet them where they are. That's the customer, all the stakeholders that are involved, that's going to move your circle, alignment, and then move you forward in terms of revenue and profitability. So that's my thought on that.
Thank you, Marjorie. We are actually at time, but I did want to give the other panelists an opportunity to just jump in with any other thoughts they had. I mean, we had plans to talk about marketing and social media. We had plans to talk about drivers of growth and you know what the big investor demands are of today. We didn't get to touch on those topics, but in case anybody wants to talk about that or in their wrap up, please, the floor is yours.
If anybody has any questions, I put my email in the chat. Please email me directly and I'll try to answer them best of my ability. If I can't help you, then
that's good.
I'll pass you on to somebody that might be able to.
Thanks, ladies, for such a wonderful, insightful conversation. I had a question. I don't know if you got to see it, but just I wanted to ask if any time in your journey, did you have a second thought or a regret of becoming an entrepreneur? Because it's a race.
Absolutely. Absolutely. What? You cannot be an entrepreneur and not go home and say, I can't do this another day. Come on now, really? Absolutely. Monica, right? We've had the highs and we've had the extreme lows. So yeah, absolutely.
You know, I've cried my tears and I've laughed and said to the working person, suckers. I've gone through it all. And sometimes it all happens in the same day.
That's right.
Look, what's amazing about being an entrepreneur is you are your own boss. So if you're not doing something right, look in the mirror. If you are doing something right, look in the mirror. Sometimes there are external factors that you know cause chaos, but I think resilience is probably one of the most important qualities that I've seen in entrepreneurs, just an ability to deal with hardship, because hardship is inevitable. We're all human beings. We all face some hardship, but it is through hardship that we grow. And it's through hardship that we learn. And I think if you have a growth mindset and think about it that way, I think the entrepreneurial journey can be amazing. And look, you do create your destiny. And I think that's probably what motivates most entrepreneurs.
And scares us.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for our panelists. It was amazing to hear from you. As I said, everyone's contact information is there in the chat, but of course you can always reach out to anybody at SheTek and the Power team, and we will happily connect you to whoever you want to be connected to. So with that, I will turn it back over to Elaine.
Thank you, Anusha. Thank you, everyone. Another great panel discussion.